Hello and welcome to Cricketomania. England cricketer Kevin Pietersen and former captain of 3 Test matches has written a tell-all autobiography where he's, among other things, accused his former colleagues of bullying him and, in a sense, creating an atmosphere of torment and fear in the dressing room. What does that mean in specific, and is it something that is affecting the fate and the fortunes of cricket, and more importantly, is it happening in our country too? Ayaz, Memon, tell us.
Well, look, there are 11 players in the dressing room. They are all very different personalities, and there are bound to be, times when there's a lot of friction, and sometimes this can kind of boil over, which seems to have happened in the English dressing room.
Yeah.
Ironically, while they were doing well,
Yeah.
and then of course it precipitated after the Ashes defeat.
Yeah.
But it's not unknown, Govind. So just to add here, he's actually accused Matt Pryor of backstabbing him.
Yeah, exactly.
More serious allegations than just bullying.
Yeah, and horrendous. That's the other word he's used.
That's the other word he's used, horrendous.
Yeah.
But even somebody like Sir Donald Bradman had his critics within the Australian dressing room. There were people who didn't like him.
Okay.
And they went out and spoke against him, either overtly or covertly.
Right. So, do we have Amol Mazumdar? Amol, how do you sort of view this whole controversy of Kevin Pietersen saying this? Is he only saying something that maybe others could have said?
Well, to be very honest, I've gone through the report in the newspaper today that he has published an autobiography. But I think, as a player, you come across a lot of other players who are of different nature. I think in a dressing room atmosphere, it's an unwritten rule not to speak about the dressing room in public. It's an unwritten rule. I mean, and it applies to all cricket dressing rooms all over the world. I was really not happy to read about Kevin Pietersen's outburst about Matt Pryor and fellow cricketers and fellow coaches. I mean, you keep those things very confidential, and it's up to it's within the boundaries of those. You've got to work within the framework of that dressing room, and it was his personal opinion to get it out in public.
Right. Okay. Amol, it seems to be a little more concerted. I mean, I can understand dressing room, flare-ups in dressing rooms. What he's saying is that there was a concerted attempt by Graeme Swann and Stuart Broad to bully and ridicule and and mock and haul up people, other players who would drop catches, and it was something that was happening all the time. So this is not something that was the result of, let's say, something going wrong in one particular match, and then coming back to the dressing room and things getting a little heated up.
I read through the reports, and I feel that it happens. It happens in every team. There are some senior players. There are some guys who like to show their authority. There are some guys who like to get a little bit of attention in the dressing room. I mean, you come across it's an 11-man team, or rather 15-man squad. So there will be different people of different opinions, different natures, different, their style of operations are different. So I think, the bullying case about fielding and drop catches, I think it's a little, we play a man sport, we play a hardball sport, and I'm sure, Kevin Pietersen is big enough to understand that these things happen in a cricket dressing room. I don't agree to what Kevin Pietersen is saying at all.
So there you are, the former Bombay captain, saying that he doesn't agree. What do you think?
I think it's partly to do, and I'm sure Amol knows about it, because Pietersen has been a bit of a maverick. In fact, he has been right through his career a bit of a show pony and also a bit of a grumbler. He's been whining. Even when he was captain, he came as captain to India, and he lost his captaincy after that, and he blamed everybody else. So he's been kind of a guy who always wants attention. But I think if the syndrome is one of it's like almost like a ragging situation when you join an institution. If you got the senior pros saying, okay, if you drop a catch, you have to apologize to me. Not voluntarily, but because you have to do it as a matter of course, then it's a bit serious. Now, you can have different coaches and captains who put in regimens which may be very stiff. And it may not suit certain players. If that's the case, then I think Kevin Peterson has to, he's made a point which is serious enough or not, we don't know.
Right. So let's now relate it to what you've seen in India. So you're familiar with at least 2 or 3 big instances of, dressing room flare-ups. And take us through that, and then we'll come to whether it represents a larger breakdown in relations in the dressing room.
I mean, Indian history is littered with such examples, right from the second tour, 1936, when Lala Manaz was sent back from a tour by his then captain, who was also the manager, the Maharaja of Vizianagaram, who was captain as well as manager. Of course, C.K. Naidu led in the test matches, but he was sent back on grounds of indiscipline. And Lala never forgave him. And we still don't know exactly what happened. Maybe he just went out for a night, celebration or whatever it was. But you've had, bust-ups between Wadekar and Bedi, Kapil Dev and Gavaskar, which both say was not as serious as people imagined. So, obviously, there have been Shrishant and Harbhajan Singh, which is more recent. Kapil Dev and Manoj Prabhakar. I mean, there have been several instances. But I don't think, maybe it's a Western kind of a thing which you come out with these tell-all books. So, none of the books that we've read in India by former cricketers dwell too much on these aspects, because I think we are naturally more reserved or more conservative about expressing these things.
Amol, do you agree with that? Are we as Indians or maybe Asians more reserved about these things, and we only don't write about it?
No, not really. I mean, I feel it depends on how you're brought up as a cricketer, and there are certain, as I'm saying, there are certain codes, certain rules. When you're playing a team sport, you've got to adhere to those rules and regulations, which are unwritten, it has to be a combined effort of a team, and those things should not come in the public. Well, there are certain examples, as what Ayaz said. Also, not to forget, in 1996, Sidhu returned from Indian tour. Nobody knows what happened over there. So there are a lot of instances with Indians also that has flared up between the captains or the coaches and the players. But certain rules, certain regulations need to be followed, and the dressing room atmosphere has to be good, and it has to be kept.
Let me put the question to you a little differently. So, is this something that could be a trend that we should be worried about, or is it, in your mind, a one-off happening or an instance? Whatever Peterson is saying, whether it actually happened in this manner or not.
What I get, to be very honest, is sour grapes. It's a question of sour grapes. He's looking at things completely in a different way. Not to forget, they had a lot of success when these things were happening. When Andy Flower was in charge, they were top of the tree in test rankings, and a lot of good things happened in English cricket. But now suddenly after 3-4 years, everything is spilling out, and I think the first impression what I get is Kevin Peterson is just spilling his beans out.
So this is a trend. I mean, that's the larger question, globally or anywhere else, and then we'll come to India.
I don't think it's a trend. I think it's always been happening. In some instances, people have gone out and spoken about it openly, or perhaps, to a degree.
So the question that we are asking really, or trying to understand, is the way Kevin Peterson defines it. It is not a flare-up. It is a concerted behavioral problem between these two bowlers and maybe the coach and maybe the wicketkeeper and the rest of the team. Right?
Maybe he's exaggerating a bit.
Possibly.
Because you see what happened was, just to trace the origins of this problem, was in 2012 when South Africa were in England, and Kevin Peterson was tweeting, he's also South African by birth, to the South African players, things about Andrew Strauss, which got leaked, and it came out in the open.
So and he's been hammered for that.
So it's been like simmering, going on. If Kevin Peterson was not such a major talent, not such a brilliant player and a match winner, he would have been dumped then. But he was brought back. He was what they call reintegrated into the team, but obviously not reintegrated well enough. Now we've had even in the Australian system where actually it's thought that the baggy green, the cap which they wear, unites everybody, settles all differences. But if you read the books that Shane Warne has written, he's critical of somebody like Adam Gilchrist or Ricky Ponting about their playing ability, or even obliquely referring to their personalities, not in the best kind of light.
Language, Amol, a larger point again that you made. So, should cricketers, when they are done with playing the major leagues and so on, should they write autobiographies? And of course, I guess the answer to that is yes. But if they write it, should there be a certain sort of unwritten code or written code about what they can write and what they cannot write?
Look, I mean, yeah, definitely. I feel yes, you can be outspoken, as rightly mentioned by Ayaz. In Memon's autobiography, he openly criticized Adam Gilchrist. He didn't have good relations with Adam Gilchrist. That's what he's written in that book. But that's fair enough. But you cannot, you cannot criticize, one and all in that team. Look at Kevin. If you come back to Kevin Peterson, he's one guy who's criticizing everyone else. Apart from, looking at himself, what behavior he has had, he tweeted against his captain just before the Test series started. So all these things flare up, and I think, of course, you can write, you can be outspoken, but there are some certain rules about players, and I don't care who he is, whether he's Kevin Peterson or Brian Lara, you need to stick with those rules and regulations about cricket. They're unwritten rules, but they need to be followed.
Amol, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll let you go there. Ayaz, so Amol is very clear, right? So there are rules and regulations.
No, but I think it's the media person's delight.
Exactly.
Imagine Kevin Peterson writing a book, and that's why even the Daily Telegraph has published an extract.
And every newspaper in Britain has
from a media's point of view, it's an absolute delight to have this kind of a thing come out, because there's obviously vicarious delight for us in finding out what the hell is happening in the dressing room.
Correct.
These are national figures.
Right.
These are international sportsmen of great achievement, and you expect people sitting in the dressing room playing for the same team, same country, to be actually compatible and cohabit well together. But
so
it doesn't happen like that.
So who's responsible for this in some way? So it's, for instance, he's also blaming Andy Flower, the coach, right? So is this the fault of the coach in some ways for not creating an environment that is a little more, equal and balanced, or is it something that the coach could not have helped if indeed there were such strong personalities, also were bullies if they were so?
I think it depends from personality to personality and the empowerment of the coach. So for instance, if the English cricket system empowers Andy Flower enormously, and the captain is more subdued vis-a-vis the coach, then the coach will start dominating. But say in the Indian scenario, you can't imagine Fletcher dominating Dhoni. It's probably the other way around, because the Indian captain currently is very, very strong. In the Australian system, the captains are usually very strong. It really depends from personality to personality.
Right. So there's a question here that's coming. How does the dressing room drama affect team selections? Doesn't it hamper team performances?
It could. That's why there are, people believe that there are favorites. But favorites is not necessarily because of disputes. You may have seen more of a player, and therefore you trust that player more often, or more enough to kind of include him in the team. But I think what's important to understand is that when you have 11 players or 15 players living together for 3-4 months, there are bound to be fissures and there are bound to be problems. It's how you sandpaper over them or resolve them, which is the key.
Correct.
There will always be disputes.
Right.
It's human nature.
Right. So Abhishek joins us, cricket journalist. Abhishek, tell us. So we're talking about the Peterson outburst through his autobiography. The question we're asking is, are the dressing room flare-ups dangerous for cricket? What's your sense?
I think even if you live with a family, there are different opinions of different persons, and till that opinion doesn't hamper the functioning of your family, it's unimportant. But when it hampers the performance of the team, then it's a problem area. Lots of debate has happened as to whether the dressing room thing is sacrosanct and whether that certain things in the dressing room should come outside or not. But always you will see it depends on the team to team and from culture to culture, and it's very, very important. I do remember Waqar Younis telling me very pointedly, because that for a big almost 1.5-2 years, when they were bowling in peak, he and Wasim Akram, they didn't used to see even eye to eye. They just used to talk. They didn't talk to each other even in the dressing room or outside, and they just used to show sign language to each other. But that was the point of the time in Pakistani cricket when they were at the peak, and these two bowlers were unbeatable in the world. So the most important thing is your performance. If your performance is not, there is no hindrance in your performance, I think these things are part and parcel of the cricket. But once it spills out and it shows negativity within the team and outside, then it is a time when coach and the higher management should look into this particular thing.
Here's another question. What about the Indian cricket team? Is the Sehwag Dhoni rift due to similar incidents? Ayaz?
I don't know if it's due to similar things. I don't even know if there's a rift in the sense that we are discussing about Peterson, and there might be disappointment, dejection. He's not in the team. You know, he's been there. Perhaps he was a little senior to Dhoni. In fact, he was. So, but it's not about, you know, this guy was bullying me or he stabbed me in the back. That's not the case unless there's a tell-all book on its way. We don't know. But, you know, I think differences have always been there. There are people, charismatic leaders like Imran Khan, who led from the front. But even he, after the World Cup victory, his players rebelled against him because they thought that he was giving more attention to his mother, the hospital in his mother's name, and his own personal ambitions, latent political ambitions, than caring about the team. So these things will always happen. I think the crux of the matter is how well and how quickly these are resolved, so that when they go out to play, they play as a unit.
Right. So, Abhishek, the question we've been trying to ask and understand is that, you know, the way Kevin Peterson has defined it in his book, it's really about a consistent pattern of bullying, of a certain attitude adopted, of a few players ganging up against the rest. Is this something that at all happens here? And if it doesn't, then what should we do to, or if we can do something to ensure that it does not happen, and, you know, in some ways keeps the team always in harmony as much as we can?
See, I think it's here where the leadership issue comes in, and the team cultures comes in, which is very, very important. Famous English captain and now a famous commentator, Nasir Hussain, in his book, he has very categorically written as to how he used to tempt bowlers who were not in the talking terms with each other, and he used to say, even use this tactic of saying, the other bowler in question, he was saying, your performance, you should not be in the team. And then he used to go to the second bowler and say, now that time has come when you should catch up with him. So captains throughout the history has used all sort of gimmicks to uplift the performance of the team. And that is the most critical thing. Even in the Indian context, as Ayaz rightly said, we don't even know as to whether there was any spat between Virendra Sehwag and Dhoni or not, or between some boys from Delhi and Dhoni or not. But we do know for certain fact. There was this feeling within Sehwag. Had he been in the team, he would have been a better test captain than Dhoni. So when you fight for each other's performance, when you fight for each other's enhancement of performance, and it is within the limit, I feel in the team game, it actually enhances the performance of your team. But if you are working in the counter purpose, against the team objective, it is there where the problem comes in, as we have seen often with the Pakistan cricket team.
Right, Abhishek. Ayaz, last word. Is there a danger in when it comes to dressing rooms?
So I think you have to kind of understand it from the prism of human nature. I mean, you know, personal ambition, factions. There might be players who speak a certain language or are culturally similar, and they form a faction.
Right. Okay, let's take the question a little back. So where we start, we said, is dressing room politics destroying cricket? So are we saying that there is no dressing room politics, or if it's there, it's not?
No, I think politics will be there even if there are two people. Yeah. So there are 11 here and perhaps 15, more, like 15 and coach and support staff, and you know who's saying what to whom. Yeah. These things are bound to happen. But I think a level of maturity must prevail, and obviously there need to be people, and preferably the captain, to sandpaper over differences. The captain may or may not have differences with a certain player, but players may have differences amongst themselves. Right. So how do you get them to forget those differences, at least for the 6 hours that you're on the field, is really the crux.
Okay, Abhishek?
Things here, the leadership is the most important. You cannot you can question the acumen of the leader or the tactic of the leader even in the dressing room. You can question some of the decisions, but once the decision is taken, the entire team should heed to the decision and should play as per the objectives defined by the playing team, and it should not be an individual thing. And as long as a human being is there, politics will be there, factionalism will be there, but the ultimate objective is very important. And here, it is here where the team ethics and etiquette becomes very important.
And last word, Ayaz, is this a book you're going to be reading very soon?
100%,
okay.
Without doubt.
Okay.
I might download it on my Kindle.
Okay.
And start reading it soon enough.
Okay, which is going to be in a few days' time in any
case.
Yes. Right. So let us know. We will, of course, come back and talk about it and whether you find any more interesting tidbits.
No, I'm all for tell-all books.
Yes.
You know, if you read some of the best biographies by sports persons, if they are very bland and they're just a narration of the matches they played and the runs they made, then really, why should one read it?
Right. You want the juice, right?
On
that note, we're closing this today's episode on Cricket Opinion. We're going to be back in 2 days' time. Thanks for watching.